Hey, good morning, Rebel Nation. This is Nick Rivera, aka SCOReONYX, coming to you live from the cutting room floor here at R&M Studios, place I have affectionately dubbed Development Hell. I'm extremely happy that you could join us today for my first PC in a new series for those new to the TV, film, game, and comic book publication industry. Development Hell is a phrase used when a project is continually being put on hold due to changes in source material. It could be anything from script, personnel, budget, release dates, and a number of other things. The Development Hell podcast is dedicated to those other things. I'll be specifically looking at composing and music in the TV, film, game industry. I'll break down a lot of misconceptions, services, honest to God, realistic problems that occur during pitch, presentation, and recording/scoring sessions. And we'll also be providing here, some advice for those of you that are just getting started, and links to demos and other tutorials and useful information on the web. Today I've got a guest host. He's a good friend of mine. He is a writer, director, editor, producer. He wears a ton of different hats in the TV and film industry. His name's Ben Fries. He'll be kind of going along with me on this maiden journey of this podcast. Hopefully it won't suck because of me. Hopefully it'll suck only because of him. So,
well, I appreciate that, Nick. Thanks for having me.
No worries, man. You got to keep the brand on par there. It's not me. It's you.
It's you. Yeah.
It's you. Without further ado, this is a really good friend of mine. I hope you can be joining me in future recordings. Ben Fries. Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And I know you got some things you want to plug for some projects you're doing that are coming up here. So we'll make sure we get those at the end. Don't let me forget. But if I do, it's your fault, not mine.
Exactly.
You're
putting it all on me, Nick.
I am. I have to. Ben, tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, of course. As you said, my name's Ben Fries. We're good friends and fellow pioneers in the filmmaking industry, right?
I guess
we're trying to be, right?
Trying to be.
Yeah, I've been involved heavily in the local Tucson, Arizona film community where I live at, and I've been writing screenplays. I have been on sets of movies. I'm in touch with a lot of great people in this local area here. And one of the main things I focus on is editing. And I know one of the main things you focus on that we want to talk about is scoring.
Yeah, right.
Because you're a composer, right? So,
right, yeah. And your dad was an actor over at Old Tucson Studios, right?
Yes, my father was a tour guide over at Old Tucson Studios for 20 years, and until they closed. And he definitely appeared in quite a few low budget movies. Usually,
hey, they're still movies.
Yeah, exactly. They still count. But he was in a ton of Western films filmed there at Old Tucson.
Right. Well, that's great, man. How's he doing?
He's fantastic. He and my mom live in California now, but he still does things, and like when he comes to town to visit, he will also go do a podcast or something. And my brother is actually involved in that too. He'll usually go with my dad and do a podcast together. So
that's awesome. Cool.
Yeah, it's fun and it's good and it helps. And everything we want to do to help the community. I mean, that's why we're doing this, right? So
absolutely. Well, there's
I'm there to foster an environment, to help out everybody and help myself too. So,
well, I think that the thing that most people should realize, as we start the podcast and everything, is Development Hell. A good portion of Development Hell is trying to get buy-in from other people. Doesn't matter who it is. It could be producers, it could be friends, it could be family, it could be even yourself, right? Like not thinking you're able to do this. And I think people don't realize that it is a very common place situation for that to happen for everybody. Everybody runs into Development Hell at some point, right?
Yeah, and a big part is networking, meeting people, and some people more so than others can help you get further and help you with your projects and that kind of thing. So I've met quite a few really talented people, yourself included, of course. And we've worked on a lot of projects together too. So we can all learn from each other and grow with each other.
And I think the reason why I wanted you to come on board is because we've shared Development Hell on a couple of different projects.
Oh yeah.
So it's one of those things where, they can teach you everything in film school, and honestly, you could even go on set and still not learn the ins and outs of everything. You kind of have to sit at every table to kind of figure
Yeah.
out, like what's holding production up, what's stopping production from even going to the next stage. And you just kind of have to be there and experience it on your own to realize that it could be a very small thing, very small monkey wrench, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To
I
just
mean,
gum up the works.
definitely. That's the best way to do it, is to just jump in with both feet and wear, like you were saying earlier, a lot of hats. I mean, I've been on
Hmm.
film sets, I've been script supervisor, yeah, I've been a PA. I filled in one time as an assistant director, and I'm not a mean guy, so I don't really like to run around yelling at everybody. So that wasn't really for me, but but I've tried all these different things, and I plan on having my official directorial debut next year with another screenplay that I've written.
Hmm.
And I've tried to learn a lot from my main guy. His name is Avi D'Amico, and he is our cinematographer slash director. And I've learned a lot from him just about sound design and things like that, and the cameras and so forth. And after all of that, those are just things I've experienced and helped out with and everything. My main stuff is I love editing and I
Hmm.
loved script writing, and I even, act and do voiceover work too. So
Well, that's awesome, man.
yeah, and when you do all that, I mean, you really get an idea of what it takes to put everything together. You know,
Yeah, it's a very, very underrepresented and very, very, how do I want to say this, mysterious portion of the production process, because a lot of people don't know what goes into actually creating something until they start doing it. And
exactly.
I think that there's a lot of people, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say people. There's a lot of podcasts that are out there that deal directly with the creation, but then don't deal with the distribution, or they deal with the distribution, but they don't deal with the pitching process, or the idea generation or anything. And that's why I really wanted to do this podcast. So, especially for a lot of people that I've met, that are, they're amateur composers. They're really looking to get into the industry, but they're just very, very unfamiliar
Sure.
with
And
it.
that's one
And
of the first things that happens is your expectations, and what to
right,
expect when you're trying to put things together. And that's always one of the first starting processes. Tell
you
us a
know,
little bit about that with your process.
well, with expectations, I fell into all the wrong things. So, um, first off, like expectations are is like I'm going to be able to, like, if I'm a composer, I can work from home. I can just, make music, send it out and do that. And there is
Yeah,
a great deal of need for that, of content to get generated and sent out. But the expectations are that you'll just be able to maybe just sit down and start writing, and you'll get all of the work possible. But the expectation is really, that's not realistic. Realistically, is you need to know a little bit about a lot if you're going to work from home, especially if you're going to learn on your own. Because traditionally, you would go and be like, an assistant to a sound engineer or an editor, or a recording artist or
yeah,
session musician. And that's where you'd kind of, cut your teeth. But this, with COVID now and probably going forward, there's going to be a lot more in-home recording and sessions like that. Uh,
for sure,
you
especially with COVID and everything. Yeah, the
Right. Your
situation.
expectation
Yeah,
should be that there's going to be a learning curve, but it is not insurmountable. I'm not classically trained as a musician. I've been playing though for 20 years.
right.
So that, I've been playing music for 20 years. Started off as a guitarist, a drummer, bassist, piano. And piano is really when I started to go into the orchestral realm, because if you can play piano, you can pretty much now play any instrument that's been sampled or recorded. So
For
that's
sure.
that's great.
And it all
And
comes
so,
back to the art form, because
well, the last
when
thing on the expectations I was going to say is
yeah,
is that the expectation too is that if you buy the latest software, you're going to get gigs. 100% incorrect,
right.
wrong. If you're creative and you're innovative and you're different from the last person that just put out something amazing, yeah, that's where you're going to get your next gig. But there is a great, demand for people that can just put together musical compositions. You may not be as excited about them, but you'll get work.
Sure. And as you were mentioning, I mean, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of different people doing this. And like you said,
Hmm.
you can't just get the latest software and think that, hey, I'm going to be, famous or whatever. I mean, it comes down to that expectation of
Right.
what we had discussed before about like people who are in it for the fame and all that, or people who are working really hard and never change and just keep their nose to the
Yeah, the
grindstone
two
and keep
different
working.
lifestyles,
Yeah,
the in love with the lifestyle that comes with your job, and people
yeah,
that are in love with the job and don't care about the lifestyle. Those are two very, very huge demographics
yeah,
in the multimedia industry. It doesn't matter what they're doing, film, music, TV, game.
yeah.
There's just they fall in love with either one or the other. The ones that fall in love with the job are the ones that are usually
Right.
constantly being called upon to help out that are getting the next gigs because they're the most reliable. They
Definitely.
care more about the product, the story, the art form. So
And I'm not saying you can't do both, but you can
no, no,
also get
absolutely
carried
not.
away. You can lose yourself and you can
Hmm.
lose sight of what you're really in it for, which hopefully for most people is the job and the art form.
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, if you get one gig, you get that gig because you want to get the next gig. And that's the way that you should kind of look at it as
For sure.
I have this job. Yes, they're paying me. I'm going to be able to work with these different professionals, but my job is to get the next job. And I've got to figure out how to do that.
And you can
Right.
still work on things on the side. You know, there were
Absolutely.
yeah,
That's a must. It's an absolute must. You should be working on your own projects, and keeping your own counsel when it comes to your own projects
for
because
sure. Yeah, this past year alone, I've been working on 2 different screenplays while I've helped write a third screenplay for a director at his request, and I've also been working on a short film, doing voiceover
Mhm.
work, as well as writing for that voiceover. It's like an animated series that probably will be out in a few years. So I mean, all those different things. I've been trying to keep up with all that, and you know, you don't want to spread yourself too thin either with too many projects. So
But it's a good problem to have where you're working on a
yes,
number of different projects, and it could be fulfilling and it could also be overwhelming. So if you're starting off in the business, my recommendation would be is, take on as much as you feel you can, but the more involved you are in different areas of the business, the more value you're going to be, and the more valuable information you're going to get from all of that.
for
Because
sure.
there's just certain things you can't read in a book or have a friend give you as part of advice or anything. It's just there's just things you need to be able to do
It's a
to
learning curve.
understand.
You know, when you're on the
It
set,
is.
you're going to learn them way more than you ever did by sitting in some
Hmm.
classroom or reading some book. Not that it's
Yeah.
not great to get a film degree, you know, like yourself, but
Hmm.
you know, I had an English degree, and you know, the one thing I know about that when I decided I wanted to really try to go full bore into this industry is I can write. So there's a
Exactly.
first
Yeah.
thing, I can write screenplays, you know, and I've been dabbling for a long time, you know, like 20 years in editing. So I'm like, well, why not do writing and editing? So those are my
I
main
remember the
two
first time we
things.
got your first editing suite. Remember
You
that
were with me.
we went and got it at Best Buy. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. That was that was memorable.
I was trying to coax you into all these different things with
Yeah, you really
with the
helped me out a
film.
lot with that, and even my haircut. So
Don't tell anybody that because just in case they see your haircut, they're gonna be like,
they're gonna be like, "Wow,
I
wow,
don't
good
know.
job, Nick."
Good job. Way to way to alienate your friend there.
Right, exactly. Hey, so this goes right into deadlines. You know what I was saying about having all those different projects. I realized a few months ago, I'm like, you know, I'm a few years into the, you know, I grew up making movies and everything with my buddies, making, you know, videos and commercials and things with you. You know, a lot of it for fun, some for contest or competitions or, you know, whatever, just to learn the craft. But now that I'm in the actual low budget environment here in Tucson, I'm realizing it's best to say, like, this month I'm going to work on this short film. Then once I've got that out of the, you know, in the bucket, then I'll work on this screenplay instead of trying to do everything at once. It gets mind boggling, and if you have deadlines, you know, it's going to be hard to meet them if you're trying to do everything at once.
Yeah, so deadlines are very, very important when it comes to getting your job, and getting your next job, right? So
Right.
I would say that with deadlines, no matter what you do, creativity isn't on a deadline. It just isn't. You have to learn to accept that creativity is not on a deadline. You get it when you get it. And so that's why it's so important that when you are commissioned to do a job, specifically, like, like a very, let's just say not maybe even low budget or high budget, just if you're getting paid for anything, right, you have to just start sitting down and writing. You cannot wait for inspiration to hit. It's not going to work that way. There's very, very few people out there, the idiot savants of the world that can just kind of sit down and write a masterpiece, whether it's musically or if it's written, or tell a story visually with photographs or video. There's very few people that can do that. And even the ones that can do that will tell you, yeah, I can do that, but it's really easy. Right? There's
Sure.
no challenge there. And I think that's where creativity lies. It lies within the challenge, right?
And
So with
some people think
deadlines,
that if you can just, do great at the art form part of it, that you're golden. But I mean, you got to juggle all these different things. So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you decide, hey, I'm going to write this, you have to still think about your client. Do they want me to edit it? Because if I have to edit it, that's another week. Oh, if they
right.
want me to, master it, that's another week, right? So now I really, instead of just having, 1 week to just write, if they want me to do all three of those things, I've got to fit 3 weeks into 1 week. I can't, you know so with deadlines, you need to really at the very beginning recognize how important they are, and that they will get you your next job. Because if you come in off of deadline, when they, people talk just like you and I are talking right now, and be like, hey, I heard you had that, that editor, that composer, or whoever on your last job, how were they? Well, the product was good, but like they
They
were
couldn't meet the
so
deadline. So
they
like
couldn't meet the deadlines, and
their
so
art
we had
is
to
great, but they just can't work
yeah, they
like
can't meet
a
the deadline.
business, and
Exactly.
film industry
And
is a business, it's going to move forward with or without you. So
yeah, exactly. And that goes with the art form. So my little tie back to the art form portion would just be, you really need to, at the beginning of your career, try to discover what your voice is. And what I mean by that is just discover the way you like to tell a story rhythmically, sonically. If you love soundscapes and you love synths, great, awesome. Find your voice in that. If you like a blend of those, great. You're a hybrid composer. Find your voice. And so that's what's going to really dictate your art form and who's going to be looking for you down the road.
well, I love what you said earlier about a little bit about a lot. To me, that's almost like a trademark or something. It sounds kind of funny, but it's true, because when you start, I mean, even deep into your career, you still know a little about a lot. Your hope is that someday, if you've been doing this your whole life, when you get older and you retire, or maybe you never retire, that you'll know a
Hmm.
lot about a lot, and then you can give to others. Give back in that way with
Yeah.
your
I
talent and
mean,
what you know and everything. So
yeah. And I think that honestly, those should be your goals. Your goals should be, I need to learn as much as I can about whatever it is I'm doing right now. That way I can store that information. I can come back to it later on. And now I need to learn the next thing. So,
exactly.
it's, if you're, especially
Ultimately,
if
it's a business, so
it,
your goals have to coincide with the deadlines. And I mean,
exactly.
you can't just be in it for yourself and making this and that. And like I said before, you can actually work on stuff of your own while you're working on
Yeah,
the
that's
main
just what I was
project.
about to say
It's
is
like a day
that's,
job.
yeah, your personal work that you're doing on your own, that is the battleground from which you will learn everything you need to know about how to make your music. Because when someone comes to you, they're not asking you to just write something like this person or something like this person. They're saying to you, hey, I hired you because I like the way you do this. I like the way that you do this. And the reason that you're so good at that is because you're the one that's created it. And that comes from toiling day and day and day, day after day after day, um, on finding your voice. So your goals, like I said, they should be, I'm writing every day. Even if I'm not being paid to write, I'm writing every day. I'm finding a new way to record violins. I'm finding a new way to compose this ostinato. That's what you should be doing.
And a lot of people look back at their prior work, and they kind of judge themselves and everything, like, well, that wasn't my best work, blah blah blah. But as you
Mhm.
go along years later, of course you're going to look back and realize, oh, I could have done that better, I could have done this, because it's an evolving, growing art form, literally doing all these
Absolutely.
things, managing all these different things, trying to meet the goals and the deadlines, and trying
I'm
to
sure if
think.
you asked Da Vinci,
Yeah.
could you have done the Mona Lisa differently? He probably said, well, I probably could have. There's
Exactly.
probably something he didn't like. I don't know. But most people will say that. And I think,
Probably, and it's considered a classic, you know. So
Yeah, well, I just think in general, like when you're in the business of creating stories and ideas, especially ones that are close to you,
yeah,
there's always things you can do better. That's not nitpicking. That's just an artist reflecting on what they've done, what they've accomplished, and what they could have accomplished. Take that information, you put it in your next project. That's growth. You know what I mean? That's
absolutely.
that's the creative growth that you need to have.
And
It's not always the way the business works, but you're not always working for the business, quote unquote. You're working for yourself. You're trying to perfect your art form. That's the lifestyle you have to live, is that this is your Zen. This is your thing of all things. This is your center.
of course.
You have to have a passion for it. And if you don't have a passion for it, then you're just another, hobbyist, I guess I would
Right,
say.
exactly. And you
So,
cannot let yourself get bogged down thinking, oh man, I'm doing these things as my main job for these companies, editing these things or composing or what have you, and
mhm.
thinking, oh, when am I going to get to do my stuff? You just keep toiling away. And eventually you can make your own things, and maybe you'll get lucky and it'll all come together at once. So,
I mean, we're at an age now where technology has made the independent creator. I mean, literally, they're in control of their own destiny at this point.
yeah, with things like
You
YouTube and
Vimeo and just so many different
yes,
things. Even what we're doing now. I mean, there was no way to do a long distance podcast. I'm in Portland. You're in Tucson.
right.
There wasn't this stuff even 10 years ago.
Exactly.
So for
Things have really
people,
changed, and there's a
yeah.
lot of
So for
competition.
yeah, so for people that say that I got to live here, I got to do this, or I got to do that. Part of that is true, but it was true maybe 15 years ago.
Exactly.
It's not true now. I mean, there's people on YouTube right now using Blender, free Blender, and getting jobs on big budget movies to do their credit sequences, to do their openings, to do, heck, even just
Exactly.
some small CGI work on a television show in Norway. It sounds crazy, but it's the truth. It is literally the
Speaking
truth.
speaking of which, speaking of CGI and how people can just even get jobs now based on just some of their work they presented, and
Hmm.
because there is so much competition and it's so easy with media to get it out there.
Hmm.
The first thing I thought of was when the Mandalorian had utilized CGI for Mark Hamill, um, to show a younger Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker, in the Mandalorian,
Yeah.
but a guy went online somewhere and he used a certain type of technology to God, I'm forgetting what it's called now, but
Was it
uh,
deep fake?
yes, thank you, deepfake. Yes, he
Yeah.
used deepfake technology, and he made it look so much better. And you know what happened? Lucasfilm realized, they saw his work. They actually gave him a job, and now he is like the main central person on um, I don't know if it's utilizing the deepfake technology per se, but like for their utilizing their CGI and de-aging, like he's the like manager now of that department.
Yeah. It's like I said, the business is crazy, that you never know where your next job's going to come from. So if you're looking to make this your life, if you want this to be your life, there's going to be struggles. Get past it. There's struggles in everything. You got to get past it. But you don't know where the next job is going to come from, or the next opportunity. Let's say that, not even job, the next opportunity. You might be able to not do what you want to do, but you might be brought on because they value your opinion. They've seen you do a bunch of different things, or heard you do a bunch of different things, or what have you. Just just be looking for the next opportunity. And the only way to do that is you got to get your stuff out there. Just sit down, start writing. The business will find you if you put something out there worth consuming.
Exactly. And as far as the business end of it,
Mhm.
one thing a lot of people don't think about are the expenses of the business. Some people think they're just going to hit it big and they're going to end up making the next Star Wars or Born Identity
Mhm.
or Marvel movie, and honestly, it's a lot of toil. It's a lot of low budget work. It's a lot of short films and, you know, um, just different things in different areas, small parts for actors, composing. Maybe you'll start off as with doing a limited part of a soundtrack or something,
Mhm.
or as like an apprentice. It's there's a lot of ways people toil to get to where they want to be, and the expense part is a big of it. A big part of it, because you do want to try to get the best possible software, but there's so many things now that you can use that are right at your fingertips. And sometimes it's not as much of an expense as you think.
Well, the thing is that for every, $1,000 program that's out there that you could go buy, there's a engineer that's made it free online somewhere. you
Yeah,
know, that because there's a belief in sharing technology is more important than just simply, selling it for some sort of value, right? It's
right.
the art form is more important. And whether you believe it or not, like open sourcing software for people, that's an art form that people have used to monetize it by selling products. There's other people who are just like, no, everyone should be able to do this for free, because if they could do it for free, guess what they can do with it? They're interested in the end product,
Right.
of what these people could develop. So, expenses, I will say this: buying the most expensive things on the market does not guarantee success. It does not guarantee creativity. It does not guarantee anything. So
Exactly.
what guarantees your success is how well thought out your ideas are, and that comes from something that is 100% free, and that is your own creativity. There
Yes.
is a guy named Alex Pfeiffer, who I talked to, and he's out of Seattle. He made a sample library based on, it's called the No War Drum. I'll put a link in it, but literally he sampled a picture that was on his wall, and he just put a microphone there, recorded it, making, hit up against a wall, and did a bunch of different things with it,
Sure.
turned it into an instrument. But see, that's the thing. Someone would say, "Oh, I need to go into a recording studio. I need to have, Abbey Road vintage, drums in here so I can record this really cool jazz album." Meanwhile, you have a guy who's just like, "Hey, well, I was walking down my hall and this painting made a really good, cool noise, so I decided to sample it. And now that I've sampled it, it's a library now. You can buy it." That's creativity. That's just thinking outside the box, literally. And expenses, they're going to be there at some point,
Sure.
because you
Did you say
you
that?
could attest to this. I mean, you're in film,
Definitely.
so you need good quality products, but you don't need those quality products at the beginning unless you have the money for it. If you do, then have at it. But
I've
most
been building
people.
up things slowly but surely over the past 20 years, to
Mhm.
improve the technology that I'm working with. So sometimes it's a half step, maybe not a full step to getting
Mhm.
there. And another big thing that you have to think about is taking any kind of feedback as you're learning and growing and everything. And instead of a negative thing, make it a positive thing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, about feedback and your influences too? What's influenced you and how you've been influenced by people who give you feedback too?
So I think one of the biggest things is you have to learn to take feedback, and you have to take it in a way that that helps you grow. So whenever somebody offers me feedback, before they can tell me anything that I would probably consider negative, the first thing I tell them is, please, be critical. Tell me I want to know what you think the issues are, right?
Right.
And they could be big or small. That's fine. But you want to get used to feedback, because it's the only way you're going to get better. And you should be seeking feedback from peers, and friends and family, and whoever will share their insight with you.
For sure.
um, and it's mainly because if everyone's always telling you that this is great, and they're just kind of, not being honest with you, you're just going to continue to keep making music the same way, and it might just be bad, right? Or you could be filming something and it might just not look good or sound good, or what have you.
Well, and one
So
thing is, if you don't take any feedback, then you can't grow. If
that's
everyone,
100%
if you're
true.
doing something terrible and people are like, it's the greatest, and you're surrounded by
Hmm.
yes men,
Yeah.
then that's about the worst possible thing for you. You want people who are like, well, that shot, you could have done this or this, or maybe next time you can do that. And you learn from people, and
and
it helps you to fight challenges.
And I think that the biggest problem is, like, when you're talking with family or close personal friends, they don't want to hurt your feelings, so they'll
Hmm.
say, "Oh yeah, it sounded great, it sounded good." Just just be honest with yourself and say, "Hey, maybe, I should send this to somebody who doesn't know me personally, or doesn't have a, personal relationship with me, so that I get some honest feedback." And then the other thing too is take the compliments. if you send it to somebody and you're asking them for feedback and what they think or how you could improve it,
Sure.
and they say, I think it sounded great. I think, no, I mean, I can't think of anything that I would tell you to improve. Take the feedback and say, oh, thanks. I appreciate that. I really worked hard on trying to make it as good as possible. But if you think of anything, let me know. But thank you so much. You really want to be able to give those thanks to people, because some people will be like, oh, he sent me something, I gave him feedback, and he never sent me anything back saying thank you or anything. Even if you gave him good feedback or bad feedback, it doesn't matter. Always appreciate people for the time they're spending on you, because that's time they don't have to. That you spent hours or weeks or whatever making your music, but they didn't. And if they take 3 or 4 minutes out of their day to listen to it, and then another 5 or 6 minutes to give you feedback, you just took 11 minutes out of their life and they gave it to you.
Exactly.
So appreciate people for their feedback and their time.
Yeah, the fact they take the time to do that, like you said, they took it out of their life to try to help you, whether it's negative or positive, either way, you take that and you grow from it. I have the good fortune of knowing Avi D'Amico. I mentioned him earlier, who's a director and cinematographer and writer and actor. He also wears tons of hats. And I've known him for many years now, and I used to think his criticism was maybe a little too hard, but I realized he will do things like he'll tell you how something needs to be and should be, right? And you seem like, okay, I really need to improve like that. But then he'll turn right around in the same conversation and then praise the stuff you did well. Not everybody will do that. I got lucky knowing this guy, but some people will just give you the whole hard, cold facts of what you did wrong or what you need to improve. He will do that, and then he will say, and you know what? I loved when you did this. This was amazing. This thing you did, I wouldn't want to work with any other person except you doing that type of work, or how you composed or how you edited a shot or something. And like, he'll give you little compliments like, oh, you're really good at doing this or hearing this, but maybe you need some work in this area, and he'll help with that. So it's good to have people who just foster that environment of positivity amongst each other in the filmmaking.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want someone to walk away from a session feeling they did nothing well. I mean, right. You wouldn't want that, for, like, when I tell people about the out of their life, when I use that phrase, they took 11 minutes out of their life and gave it to you.
Right.
When you say something like that, I think it has more resonance than just like, thank you for your time. It's like, yeah, thank you for your time. It almost seems like your time is like something like sugar. Can I borrow some sugar? Can I borrow, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's so non-meaningful. But when I tell people, especially that, I'm like, if they give any minutes of their life to you,
yes,
you need to thank them for that, because that has more of a resonance of permanence, right? Like,
yeah,
I'll never get those 11 minutes back.
And again, it's about
it's respect and a humble nature that you should have when you're dealing with trying to grow as an artist, because at some point, whether you make it or don't make it, I guarantee you someone's going to ask you the same thing. Can you take a listen to this and tell me what you think? And you want to pay it back, pay it forward.
Of course. It's like I said, you don't want to forget about who you are.
Right.
You want to always give back to your local community or the community at large.
Just people who helped you and
help yourself and help others. Yes.
Yeah. And even if people didn't help you, recognize that there is a need for people to get that help and just start doing it. That's why I made this podcast.
Exactly.
Is because there's so many people out there that will ask me questions about software, about writing, about a number of different things. And there's not a forum for them to kind of learn or just to have the mythology of you need this, you need that, you need to know this person, you need to know that person. There's just a huge gray area of information that people don't know. And it's because there's really nothing dedicated to, the development hell of trying to get something from page or screen, to the cutting room or to screen or the scoring room. There's not a whole lot. And I think once people realize that professionals deal with this every day, and amateurs deal with this every day, the jump from amateur to professional is not that big of a leap. It's really just going to be, how far do you want to jump?
Exactly. And that is perfect for what we're going to discuss next, which is challenges, because there are a lot of challenges, obviously, both for the local independent scene and for Hollywood at large with the big budget movies. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your personal challenges within the composing world?
So a couple of things. So like I said, I wasn't classically trained. So one of my biggest challenges was learning music in general. So I started playing guitar, and guitar was fairly easy for me to learn.
Sure.
And so after I was done playing guitar, I was like, well, this is great. I'd like to play bass. So I started playing bass. And then I said, well, I've got these two things down. I want to play drums. So I started playing drums and then the piano. And so the challenges for sitting down and making music is you need to not know classically how to play certain instruments. You just need to know how they sound, their register, their timbre, just basic fundamentals, right? Just very, very basic. You could literally go on Udemy and buy a class for $9.99 and literally just learn the absolute fundamentals of sound, music, and theory. Once you're at that point where you've got at least a basic understanding, the biggest challenges are trying to figure out, okay, what is the next step? Where do I see myself going? Do I want to make rock music? Do I want to make pop music, EDM? Do I want to compose music for TV, film, and game? What do I want to do? And most people don't think about this, but this is one of the biggest challenges, is deciding which way you want to go, because you might have a number of different influences. I have a ton. Whether it's, Alan Silvestri, who's my favorite composer, or Trent Reznor, who's my favorite musician, in the sense that he has invented a genre all on his own that, what would you classify, the Nine Inch Nails?
Yeah, it's hard to say with Trent Reznor. He's such a jack of all trades. And
he transcends the music itself.
He does this violent, weird, crazy sounding music, and then he does like the soundtrack to Social Network, and he's a guy with a lot of hats, wears a lot of hats and does a lot of things.
He started off as a synthesizer player in a
he developed his own sound, and a very unique thing that cemented him, in the entertainment industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's just really him, and I think one other person that works with him. The rest are session musicians in the Nine Inch Nails tours. That's who it is. It's just session, musicians. They're not necessarily part of the original Nine Inch Nails, because he is the original Nine Inch Nails.
Right. And I have a lot of respect for people like that who can create an entire whole genre and subset. As I'm sure you remember, one of my favorite musical groups is a group called Enigma, and they've been around forever. They've been multi-platinum. Mm-hmm. They just had a new album after being apart for almost a decade. And it's really just one guy, Michael Cruteau, and he goes around the world and finds all these different samples of music and dance and all these things and brings them all together. And he and Trent Reznor are very much alike in that way. And that's it's pretty amazing when you can do that and get the chance to experiment and come up with different sounds. I'm sure that's amazing for a composer.
I think you remember that when I was going to school for film and everything, I told you that one of my icons I looked up to was Robert Rodriguez.
Of course.
And the first book that I ever bought after I got out of school was Rebel Without a Crew, which is the reason why I created this same name of Rebel in Motion, right?
Sure.
But he, like for Once Upon a Time in Mexico and the original El Mariachi, he shot, chopped, and scored all of that.
Yep.
That's a lot of work for one person to do, to shoot, to edit, and to score something. That is so much work. But
he did it all himself.
Not just did he did it all himself, but when you decide to take on all of that, you're going to learn things that you're good at, things that you're not good at.
Exactly.
And that's the benefit of doing that, because we tend, I think, when we make the biggest challenge I would say is that when we make things, we tend to have a personal investment in it because it's from us, it's kind of a part of us.
Right.
But we also have to think that we're creating this. Are we creating this for us, or are we creating it for them?
Exactly.
And those are two very, very, very different beasts. You know what I mean? Just by changing that focus there, am I making this for me, or am I making it for them? You know, what's more important to me? Because
Exactly.
if it's more important to me, then you probably shouldn't share it with them, because they probably won't like it.
Well, and it's about
So
finding that balance, you know, where you can make it
exactly,
be something you enjoy and something that somebody else wants from you, like a job, but you can put your own stamp on it.
yeah, and that's what it is. It's honestly, the biggest challenge is trying to figure out where you belong, in the grand scheme of things. You know, where does your music, where do your ideas, where does your genre belong? And if it doesn't belong to one thing, that's fine too. But you have to journey inward a little bit to find out what you're about. What is your music? What are you trying to say? If it's all about you, then it's not about them, and there's no reason for you to share it with anybody. You make your own music. But if you're making music because you want them to feel the way you do, great. Make something accessible so that you can transcend. You don't have to be 100% you or 100% them. It's 50-50. That's the challenge. That's the
Right.
biggest challenge, I would say, for new artists, is trying to find that balance between us and them. And it shouldn't be.
It is hard to be somebody who can make something for themselves and have it still be accessible to everybody else. There are rare exceptions like Jim Jarmusch, David Lynch, people like that, and they have a very unique vision, and it's not always for everybody. But in general, you want to be able to appeal to as many people as possible to be successful.
Well, this is, kind of, the last thing here I'll mention is, going back to Robert Rodriguez. Robert Rodriguez was such a huge fan of Frank Miller's Sin City.
Sure.
And if you go back and watch that movie, Robert Rodriguez wanted to make something for the fans of Sin City. He didn't want to make a movie like Sin City, or he didn't want to make his version of Sin City. He wanted to make Frank Miller's version of Sin City.
Yep.
And that's, I guess that's the best way you can kind of look at it. Frank Miller made this, the fans loved it, and so they went ahead and said, yes, let's make it because the fans want it. This is what they like. This is what they loved about this run of Sin City. And Robert Rodriguez was the same way. He loved the comic. He loved everything about it, the artwork, all of it. And he said, let's make this for the fans. It didn't make a ton of money, but it sure did make a huge, huge impact in the industry.
Yeah, and when an artist can reinvent everything like that, like a George Lucas with Star Wars, or yeah, Robert Rodriguez, Quentin Tarantino, people like that, they completely, using their skills, things they
Denis
learned.
Villeneuve with Blade Runner and Dune coming out,
Yeah, he has a very unique vision, and his movies are all incredible. So, and the sound design, I'm sure as a composer you can appreciate that. The sound design on his movies, like Arrival and like Blade Runner 2049,
For every Trent Reznor, there's like an Atticus Ross that's by his side who's like, helping him create his vision.
For
but
sure.
I think, like I said, that's just the thing. He's not taking that project to redo Blade Runner because he wants to make his own version of Blade Runner. He wants to make Blade Runner because he loves Blade Runner.
Right, exactly.
He loved that film, and he doesn't want to remake it. He just wants to continue the story and do whatever he can to be as honest and forthcoming to the film. Right. That's what I mean by doing what you want and doing what you want because they want it.
Exactly. And I'll say two quick things about Denis Villeneuve. A lot of people were very surprised how well he was able to craft a film that, was its own thing, but was such a nod to the original movie and kept, what is it? I want to say he just made that same world, and then he made his own story around it. And, it just kind of unites everybody when you can do a new thing and not just repeat the old thing, but then please the original fans too. And some people actually think that it was a better movie than the original movie.
Yeah. Well, I think we've already talked about this. I'm not a huge fan of the original Blade Runner, except, like I said, the music, the sound, the sound design, the music, and the visuals of that was light years beyond its day.
Yeah, another thing that was an incredible influence to cyberpunk and to visually. And, Vangelis was a composer who was a unique composer that didn't do a lot of movies. And it was one of his first big theatrical movies. And later he would go on to win an Oscar for Chariots of Fire for writing the soundtrack for that. So,
and I'll say for me, it introduced me to Rutger Hauer.
yes.
Right. And,
Incredible
he was
actor.
fantastic. Yeah. And he was fantastic in that. R.I.P.
Yes, of course. Yeah, sadly, recently.
And you know what? I apologize too if he ever hears this. I've been calling Denise Villeneuve. I apologize that I've been screwing up your name. I promise I will make sure that it is corrected in everything I say ever again about you.
I'm here to
keep
help,
making
Nick, so.
and keep making great movies. And I'd like to see something original from you, like The Arrival. Maybe you've done a lot of sci-fi stuff. You also did Prisoners, right?
Yeah, he did
that was a really good movie.
Yeah, great.
Not a huge fan of Paul Dano. Was that who it was? Was it Paul Dano? No,
I can't remember honestly, but
I forgot who it was.
Hugh Jackman was incredible in that though. So
probably one of his best roles.
I would agree.
Outside of just being Wolverine for 100 years.
Exactly. You can't always do that. So.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but with Jake Gyllenhaal and that tattoo on his neck and his weird haircut, I mean, were you the only one that was just like, this guy's a cop? Is this guy really a cop? I was half thinking he was going to be like the accomplice to the guy, the kid in the well or whatever that thing was, right?
Yeah, so. It was hard to ascertain what was going on, and there's even more twist like at the very end too. It's a great, fantastic twist. You're not really sure what's going to happen with Hugh Jackman's character at the very, very end, but you're kind of hopeful that maybe things will work out. And
that's the thing about
even in the sound design from that, at the end, Hugh Jackman is, if I remember, he's whistling or playing some music or something, and he's hoping someone will hear it and come save him. So,
and it's just the irony of the creative process. It's like you build all this tension because something's going to happen, but it's always ironic in the very end. He had a prisoner, and then at the very end of that movie, he became a prisoner.
Yes. Exactly.
And just the same thing in Blade Runner. They're looking for, his daughter. And instead of finding it, he actually delivers Harrison Ford to his daughter. Like,
exactly. You spend half the movie thinking Ryan Gosling is the child of Harrison Ford's character. So
yeah,
they pull the rug
and then
out
you realize
from
they all think that.
Yeah, exactly.
They all think that, and it could be true. They're all just like him.
And when you can bring that all together, from the script, challenging you or surprising you, to the sound, the soundtrack making you feel a certain way, and the sound design just being incredible, and the special effects, just all that stuff, when it all comes together, it's so satisfying. And that can be that way. It can be that way in low budget movies, big budget movies.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's they share the same principles regardless of what.
Successful in that way, it's very satisfying. So.
One of the last things I'll say here, because I did want to make sure I passed on a little bit of advice on this. If you're going to become a film, TV, game composer, one of the biggest things that you'll want to make sure that you do is your music is there to support a story. It's not there to overtake the story. It's not there to overtake the scene. It's there to help propel it if it needs it, but it's there to back up the emotion and the drama and the action and the exposition, all of it. Don't fall in love with making the music grander than what you're scoring it for. Make it just as exciting and emotional as what you see on screen, and you'll always knock it out of the park. That's what you need to do. You got to find a pace with the action on screen, and that's how you'll become a very, very good composer. Maybe take an editing class, as I would also say. Since you're an editor too, Ben, I'm sure you probably understand now that editing is a huge portion of how emotion moves through a story.
Yes, definitely.
It's very, very important how to transition from one emotion to another. And sometimes you only have a frame to do it.
Exactly.
You have one frame, and that's
to composing. One big thing is you want the music to complement the editing. So big criticism I've heard from people, especially when they have like the pop music soundtrack or whatever with a bunch of popular songs, is a lot of critics hate when a composer tries to lead the audience a certain way, to feel a certain way. So you don't want to be led by, the leash, proverbial leash per se. you want to make music that complements the moments in the movie. And sometimes you can make a moment no one's ever experienced exactly like that. And, rather than just trying to force you to feel a certain way, you can make people feel something they've never felt before. And that's truly when you're succeeding.
And I think it's just you have to gauge the experience, or the project, I should say, that you're working on, because throughout the movie, like Thor Ragnarok, huge blockbuster movie, and the last sequence where he's fighting his sister, they're playing Led Zeppelin. You know what I mean? But
Right.
in the lead up to that, they weren't playing a bunch of music that are forcing you to feel an emotion or anything like that. They're just playing the background synthesizers and stuff like that, because it's going with the flavor of the movie.
Exactly.
I would just say, don't overload your sonic palette with just stuff that's already come before, whether it's actual orchestral music from another movie, or chart busters that have been all around on the radio for a long time.
Well, and a lot of people criticize the movie Tenet for the music being way too loud and drowning out even some of the dialogue, and some people joke that well, they couldn't really understand the plot, so if it just sounds really cool and really loud, then that'll help it.
Yeah.
And I
work with Inception.
Great soundtrack, but it was a confusing movie, and sometimes you gotta scale it back a little bit in order to please people, because there's a lot of divisiveness about that soundtrack.
Well, I mean, like with Inception, it was great because it was something that you didn't really hear anymore, and then now electronic Brahms blaring over every single trailer is all you see, right? And sometimes that's good.
Filmmaker, yeah, inspired people with with what you were just talking about.
Well, hey, I don't want to keep us too much longer. I know you had some things you wanted to plug, and I wanted to make sure we covered that, and we'll make sure to put some links in the blog here, and also on YouTube once we release everything, so that people can keep track of what you're doing and stay on top of all your projects coming up.
Sounds fantastic. And then we can end with our lightning round, where I throw 4 or 5 quick things at you to get your reaction. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
Perfect.
Let's do it.
So we'll go to the lightning round here.
Okay.
CGI.
Overused.
Superman.
Iconic.
Ridley Scott.
It's always with this one.
He's my favorite director. So.
Yeah. Needs a renaissance period.
Yeah, when he was younger, his stuff was better. Definitely.
He needs another renaissance period. That's what he needs.
And he's kind of old, so I don't know if that's going to come or not.
It can come anytime, man.
This is true. He could be inspired and tomorrow make the greatest soundtrack
exactly.
ever. So. Tom Cruise.
I still don't know. I actually thought about that a while ago when you had mentioned that to me before, and I still couldn't come up with an answer. I just
hashtags.
Useful, surprisingly.
Okay, and last but not least, Nick Rivera.
Work in progress. I'm going to say that all the time. So
that's and that's a perfect response for what we just talked about and everything we just went over. It's all a work in progress, and
yep. And speaking of work in progress, what are you going to be getting into here later on?
Yeah, speaking of work in progress, first of all, I'm working on 2 different screenplays right now. Hopefully both of them will get produced and created next year, full-length movies. And I'm hoping to edit both of those. And I've already got the screenplays written, and I'm just finessing those right now. And I'm currently working on a full-length feature that I'm getting near the end of as far as editing the footage. And a couple quick things I want to plug are some movies I worked on set, as well as editing 2 movies that are currently available on Amazon Prime. One which is called Positive, and another one which is called The Tiny House Christmas. I'm going to do a shout out for those. Please check them out on Amazon Prime.
We'll definitely leave a link in there too for those movies there on Amazon.
And I wanted to say thank you so much, Nick, for the opportunity to join you. I'd love to be back in the future and just continue studying and discussing this great filmmaking world that we take part in.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have you back. I thought it was a
Thank you.
great conversation. And as our flagship, this went a little bit longer than normal, but this was our first episode. So just getting traction, we'll make sure to kind of cut it down. If you actually want to catch the full podcast, I will be uploading that too. So you can listen to the full length feature. There'll be an edited version on here just a little bit later once I upload it tonight.
Yeah, this is like the double whopper version of the
yeah,
it's the front loaded podcast.
Yeah, front loaded, crazy beer gut one. That's basically it.
It'll be sleeker and prettier in the future. So.
It will be, absolutely. Well, listen, once again, thanks for sharing some time with me. Appreciate you taking those minutes out of your life to spend here in development hell. You are now allowed to crawl back out into normal life and go enjoy your rest of your Sunday. Everybody else, Rebel Nation, thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you. Don't forget to like and subscribe and head over to the YouTube channel where you can check out demos and tutorials and future releases of everything that I'm going to be doing. Also, don't forget to check out samplelibraryreview.com to check out all my reviews in the future. Give Don Bodin a shout out and let him know where you came from to give me more work.
We all want that.
We all want that. So, all right, listen, Ben, you take care. All right. Good luck on the projects and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Thank you. You too, Nick.
Rebel Nation out.